My friend, let me begin by telling you that the spirit world is more real than the chair you are sitting on right now. What you see with your eyes is temporary, but what you cannot see governs what you can see. And because most people ignore this truth, they open their doors to forces they do not understand. You see, witches are not simply figures in fairy tales or stories told around a fire. They are real spiritual agents of darkness who look for places and people to inhabit, influence, and destroy. And the tragedy is that many homes today have become magnets for their presence, not because witches are so powerful, but because we give them an invitation without knowing it. Every item carries a spirit. Every object has an origin. Nothing is neutral. When you bring something into your home, you bring the spirit behind that item with it. That is why the enemy loves to hide in the ordinary. He doesn't need you to chant in the night or call upon demons. All he needs is for you to decorate your living room with what carries his essence. And before long, you wonder why you are restless, why the atmosphere feels heavy, why arguments rise out of nowhere, why your children are tormented in their sleep, why your finances are drying up. It is because the very items within your walls have become doorways for witches to access your space. One of the things that attract witches to a home is anything consecrated to false worship. You may think it's just art, just culture, just a souvenir. But what you call decoration, the kingdom of darkness calls a covenant. That carved idol you placed on the shelf, that mask hanging on your wall, that statue you received as a gift, those things were never innocent. They were dedicated to spirits, and spirits never leave what belongs to them. By displaying them, you are signaling to witches, this house is open. They don't need your permission to enter. They already have it through what you carry. Another common doorway is books, symbols, and charms associated with occult practices. Some of you may think it's curiosity, harmless exploration, or even tradition. But when you keep those books of spells, those tarot cards, those pendants, those zodiac charts, or even music and movies steeped in witchcraft, you are literally stocking your home with invitations. Witches are drawn to those things because they recognize their own language. They recognize their own tools. The presence of those objects tells them, there is a place already aligned with us. Then there are garments and jewelry that carry spiritual marks. You wear them thinking it's fashion, but some designs are not designs. They are symbols. Some patterns were not invented to look good. They were created to transmit allegiance. When you wear them, you do not just wear beauty. You wear a message, and the realm of darkness can read it. That is why certain jewelry, rings, or clothing can turn your home into a gathering ground for witches. You didn't buy a shirt. You bought a covenant. Even certain gifts can become entry points. Not every gift is a blessing. Some are seeds planted to monitor you. Some are spiritual anchors disguised as generosity. That is why discernment is vital. A cursed gift on your dining table can turn your whole household into a battleground overnight. And hear me, this is not superstition. This is principle. Witches do not waste their energy trying to break through fortified doors. They look for openings. They search for what belongs to them, because what belongs to them gives them legal access. That is why the scripture says, do not bring a detestable thing into your house, or you will be set apart for destruction like it. Because heaven understands the law of possession. Whatever you host, you empower. Beloved, you must guard your home with vigilance. Your house is not just where you eat and sleep. It is your altar, your covering, your embassy in the earth. And if you fill it with objects that carry strange covenants, you are undermining your own authority. Stop treating spiritual matters casually. Examine what you own. Pray over what enters your door. Ask, who gave this to me? What does this represent? Where did this come from? What spirit is tied to this? Because witches are not attracted to your home by chance. They are summoned by what you tolerate. Your peace, your joy, your protection, your destiny. These are too precious to trade for an idol on the wall, a cursed bracelet, or a decorative mask. Do not allow witches to find a nest in your house because of your ignorance. Cleanse your space. Dedicate your items. Remove the strange fire from your dwelling. For when your home is filled with light, no witch, no curse, no evil force can remain. And do you know what else? Witches are attracted to music and sounds that carry their frequency. Not all melodies are innocent. There are songs crafted under the inspiration of spirits, designed to shift atmospheres and open portals. You may play it because it is trending, because the beat is catchy, but in the unseen realm it is not entertainment. It is invocation. The words you release in your home, even when sung casually, become incense in the spirit. If those lyrics glorify lust, rebellion, death, or pride, you have just turned your living room into an altar for darkness. Witches don't need to knock when you are already singing their anthem. And let us talk about mirrors, symbols, and objects of vanity. A mirror is not just glass, it can be a gate. That is why in many traditions and occult practices, mirrors are used for rituals, scrying, and calling spirits. When such items are fashioned under the wrong hands and placed in your home, they become openings that witches exploit. You see, what you thought was just decor could become a portal, a window through which they monitor and manipulate. That's why some people feel as if they are being watched in their own rooms, because spiritually they are. Even technology can become a magnet when misused. A television, a phone, a computer, all neutral tools until consecrated for corruption. What you stream, what you allow into your ear and eye gates, determines the spiritual climate of your house. Witches are drawn to the images and words you feed on because whatever enters your soul creates an atmosphere that welcomes or resists them. Candles, crystals, incense, all these too can be openings. The world sells them as relaxation, as wellness, as spiritual balance. But many of these practices are rooted in ancient altars. Burning incense to calm the energy is not neutral, it is sacrifice. Crystals do not heal, they transmit the vibrations of covenants made with spirits long ago. And the moment you put them in your home, witches recognize their signal. They see the beacon in the spirit and know exactly where to land. Even photographs, paintings, and art can be more than just beauty. An image is a container of meaning. An artist can pour intention into a piece that looks harmless to the natural eye but screams allegiance in the spiritual. Some paintings carry spirits, some sculptures release energy, some patterns were designed to call on powers. And when you buy them cheaply, thinking you are just supporting art, you may actually be paying for a spiritual intruder. There are also household practices that witches use as footholds. If you keep your home filled with clutter, filth, and disorder, you are creating a breeding ground for oppression. Darkness thrives in chaos. When your environment lacks order, it mirrors the enemy's nature, and spirits are drawn to it. That is why light and cleanliness are so important, not just physically but spiritually. Order attracts God's presence, disorder attracts the adversary. And relationships themselves can become items. People leave things in your home, gifts, clothing, books, jewelry, that carry their spiritual essence. When someone with dark intentions leaves behind a belonging, it becomes a bridge. Witches can attach themselves to those objects to continue their influence over you even after they have walked away. That is why discernment is critical when deciding what stays under your roof. And let me tell you something else. Food itself can become an open gate. Not all food that enters your house is only for the stomach. In Scripture, food was often used for sacrifices, for covenants, for worship. When witches want to gain access, they may send food into your home because food carries the spirit of the giver. You may say grace over it, but if it was prepared with evil intent, it carries more than just flavor. It carries an agenda. Some of you have wondered why after eating at certain places or after receiving meals from certain hands, you suddenly feel heavy, sluggish, or tormented in your sleep. It is because food, once eaten, unites you with the covenant behind it. That is why the enemy loves to use it as bait to infiltrate a household. Another point that cannot be ignored is money. Do you know that not every currency you touch is clean? Some money has been used in rituals. Some notes and coins have been consecrated in blood. When such money enters your home, it carries a vibration that attracts spiritual traffic. Witches are drawn to homes where cursed money flows freely. That is why discernment in financial dealings is so important. The love of money is not just about greed. It is about how money can become a leash in the hands of the enemy when not handled under God's covering. Even toys and children's items can become instruments. Many parents do not realize that the enemy targets the innocence of their children by placing cursed objects in their bedrooms. Dolls, cartoons, video games, all can be disguised as innocent fun, yet some are coded with symbols, characters, and spirits that invite witches to influence a child's mind. This is why children wake up crying at night, why they are plagued with nightmares, why their behavior suddenly shifts. It is not always natural. Sometimes it is spiritual because of the very objects surrounding them. And let us not ignore plants and herbs. The world pushes certain herbs and roots as natural remedies, but behind them lies ancient practices of witchcraft. Some plants were consecrated for rituals, some leaves burned in ceremonies. You may think it's only for healing, but when you keep them in your home without knowledge, they become altars of connection. Witches are attracted to such items because they recognize their spiritual code. Even perfumes and oils can carry hidden meanings. In the kingdom of God, oil is used for anointing, for consecration, for healing. But in the kingdom of darkness, oils and perfumes are also used for enchantments. When an oil has been prayed over in the wrong spirit, it doesn't just smell good, it marks your home. Every fragrance is not innocent. Some were manufactured and released with rituals that allow spiritual forces to track and inhabit those who use them. And beware of blood-stained objects, whether literal or symbolic. Witches are attracted to blood because blood is covenant. Blood speaks. That is why in the Old Testament, God forbade his people from consuming blood. It was sacred because life is in the blood. When objects, jewelry, or even entertainment glorify blood, violence, or death, they send a signal that attracts witches. Because the spirit world recognizes blood as a legal tender, a spiritual currency. Even broken promises can turn into objects of attraction. When you vow something before God and do not fulfill it, the unkept word becomes a spiritual item in your home. It testifies against you. The enemy uses it as evidence, as a doorway, as a claim. That is why witches circle around homes where covenants have been broken. They smell the weakness. They smell the open gap in the spirit. And I must also tell you about photographs and images of the dead. Many people keep portraits of ancestors, shrines to family members, or items belonging to those who have passed away. While it may feel like honor or memory, in the spiritual world it can become a tie, a legal string that witches use to bind the living to the realm of the dead. Ancestral worship is one of the oldest doorways of witchcraft, and when pictures and relics are exalted in your home beyond remembrance, they turn into objects of covenant. Witches are drawn to that atmosphere because they know the dead cannot speak, yet the living can be manipulated through their memory. Another item that attracts witches is water, related artifacts used for ritual. Bowls of water, seashells arranged for energy, fountains dedicated to luck. All these may seem like decoration, but many are rooted in marine spirits. Wherever water is placed as a sacred object without God's consecration, it attracts spirits of confusion and seduction. Witches work closely with marine covenants, and they can enter your home through the very symbols you thought were harmless beauty. Then there are masks, carvings, and artifacts from cultures deeply tied to witchcraft. You may bring them in as souvenirs from travel, thinking they are just exotic art. But you have unknowingly imported a spiritual altar. Some masks were worn in rituals, some carvings created for sacrifices, some instruments designed to summon spirits. Witches recognize their origin immediately and are attracted to homes where those artifacts dwell, because those items act like lighthouses in the spirit realm, shining a beacon that calls them. Even writings, poems, and symbols matter. Some literature was birthed under inspiration, not of God but of spirits. Words carry life or death. When you host books, scripts, or writings glorifying rebellion, perversion, or occult practices, you are storing firewood for witches to ignite. Words on paper become seeds in the atmosphere, and witches are attracted because the environment already agrees with their agenda. Clothing inherited or purchased second hand can also become dangerous. You may wear it innocently, but clothes often carry the spirit of their former owner. Garments worn during rituals, ceremonies, or acts of sin can hold residue that attracts witchcraft. Witches are drawn to homes filled with such items because they know that garments speak. Just as the mantle carried Elijah's spirit, clothing today can carry the essence of whoever wore it. And yes, even jewelry, rings, necklaces, bracelets, especially those engraved with strange patterns or gifted without explanation. These items often serve as tokens of covenants, subtle contracts worn on the body, but influencing the whole house. Some are forged in places of ritual, others designed to look appealing, but coded with symbols of darkness. Witches see these things as flags marking territory. Do not overlook calendars, posters, and objects displaying zodiac signs. Astrology is not innocent. It is ancient witchcraft repackaged. When you decorate your home with the signs of the stars, you are submitting to the rule of creation instead of the Creator. Witches are drawn to that alignment because it places your destiny under a system they can manipulate. And one of the greatest open doors is unforgiveness and bitterness stored like an object within the walls of a home. You cannot see it on a shelf, but it sits in the atmosphere. Every word of anger, every unhealed wound, every curse spoken becomes a residue that attracts darkness. Witches love to enter houses where strife lingers because division is their playground. The very walls absorb the conflict, and the enemy makes it his throne. And another subtle attraction for witches in a home is the presence of dream catchers, charms, or talismans that many people hang innocently for decoration. They are sold in markets, promoted in stores, even marketed as cultural or protective symbols. But what they really are, in their origin, are spiritual nets designed to capture and manipulate dreams. When you hang them above your bed, you are declaring in the unseen world that your dreams are open for interception. Witches are drawn immediately because those objects grant them legal access into the night season of your household. Pets and animals can also be instruments if you are not discerning. There are cases where animals have been used as spiritual carriers, vessels manipulated by witchcraft. A pet given as a gift, or one that suddenly behaves strangely, can be more than natural. Some animals were consecrated in rituals before being sold or passed on. When such creatures enter your home, witches find a physical bridge to keep watch over your dwelling. Also pay attention to music instruments and sound tools. A drum is not just a drum, a bell is not just a bell, a flute is not just a flute. In many cultures, instruments were first designed for spiritual rituals, not entertainment. When such instruments are kept in your home, even as decoration, they can release vibrations that summon spirits. Witches recognize their sound even if you never play them, because their presence alone carries a signal into the atmosphere. Let me not ignore perfumes, powders, and cosmetics that have been crafted with enchantments. Some industries and manufacturers dedicate their products to powers for sales and influence. When those items come into your home, they are not just beautifying agents. They become points of contact. Witches are drawn to them because of the rituals done before they ever reached your hands. Another overlooked item is writings, notes, or personal belongings of past relationships that were never spiritually severed. A letter, a gift, or a piece of jewelry from someone who was spiritually toxic can continue to tie your household to their influence. Witches are drawn because those objects act as spiritual cords, keeping old covenants alive even after the relationship has ended. Even colors and patterns used in certain fabrics and designs are intentional. Some colors were consecrated for rituals, some patterns designed as spiritual codes. You may lay them on your bed, hang them as curtains, or wear them as clothes without realizing they communicate allegiance in the spirit. Witches are drawn to such items because they can read the language of those designs. Don't forget weapons and objects connected to violence. A sword, a dagger, or even symbolic items used in bloodshed can carry a residue that opens doors. Violence leaves a scent in the spirit, and witches are attracted to homes where that scent lingers because bloodshed is their covenant ground. And yes, even souvenirs from funerals, wakes, or burials are dangerous. Many people keep cloths, wreaths, or tokens from those gatherings as memory. But in reality, they carry the vibration of death. When death items are honored in your home, witches are drawn because death is their territory, and those tokens act like beacons to their world. And I must speak about coins, stones, and small objects picked from sacred sites or graveyards. Some people collect them as keepsakes or tokens of travel, but in the unseen realm, those objects are stamped with the authority of the ground they came from. When you place them in your home, you import the covenant of that soil. Witches recognize them instantly because they carry spiritual signatures that cannot be erased by distance. What you thought was a harmless souvenir becomes a magnet for monitoring spirits. There is also the matter of candles carved with symbols or colored for specific rituals. In the natural, they look like decoration or tools for relaxation, but many of these candles are made and dedicated with intentions you never agreed to. Once lit, they release an atmosphere that witches follow like a trail of smoke. You think you are creating ambience, but in reality, you are announcing to the unseen realm that your house is available for visitation. Another open door comes through letters, contracts, and documents tied to ungodly agreements. Paper may look lifeless, but in the spiritual dimension, ink carries witness. If a contract was signed under deception, if a letter was written in manipulation, if papers remain in your home tied to sin or dishonor, they become objects of testimony against you. Witches circle homes where such documents remain because they smell legal grounds. And let me add that broken or cracked mirrors, especially those that have been in the family for generations, are more than just damaged glass. In occult practice, mirrors represent gateways. A cracked mirror becomes a fractured gate, one that witches use to slip through unseen. That's why some households experience sudden shadows, moving figures, or restless sleep. The mirrors are not reflecting, they are transmitting. Do not overlook rugs, mats, or cloths that were once part of ceremonies. Many people buy second-hand or antique items without knowledge of their origin. But some of these were laid before idols, some were spread on ritual grounds, some soaked with chants and sacrifices. Witches are drawn to them because they carry the imprint of worship not given to God. And yes, jewelry inscribed with initials, numbers, or coded images can be more than ornaments. Some carry planetary signs, some ancient scripts, some hidden emblems of allegiance. When they are worn or displayed in your home, they silently declare a covenant. Witches recognize those signs immediately, like soldiers recognizing the emblem of their kingdom. Even masks of comedy or tragedy, often used in theater or decoration, were born in ancient spiritual practices. They were originally symbols to channel spirits of performance. When those masks are placed in a home, witches are attracted because those faces are not empty, they are invitations. And beware of gifts from unknown origins. Items that come unasked, left at your door, or given with strange insistence should never be embraced without prayer. Witches use gifts as seeds. What looks like generosity can be a hook. Once inside your house, it serves as an anchor that ties their influence to your atmosphere. And think about the use of clocks and timepieces. Many do not realize that in occult rituals, time itself is manipulated. Certain clocks, especially antique or gifted ones, may carry enchantments tied to cycles. When such a clock is placed in your home, it does not only mark the hour, it becomes a regulator of spiritual influence. That is why in some houses, the same negative events repeat at the same time every night. Witches are drawn to those objects because they align them with their cycles of control. There is also significance in carpets and floor coverings with embedded symbols. You may walk across them daily without noticing, but they may be designed with spiritual diagrams that were originally used in ceremonies. To the human eye, it's just art, but to witches it is a seal, a gateway. Every step you take across it is agreement. Every placement in your home is permission. And then there are household utensils, bowls, cups, and plates that may have been used in rituals before they ever reached your hands. The marketplace is not just an exchange of goods. It is an exchange of spirits. Some vessels are already consecrated. When they enter your house and you eat or drink from them, you participate unknowingly in covenants not your own. Witches are drawn to homes with such items because they know the vessels carry spiritual memory. Do not underestimate antiques either. Furniture, chairs, tables, wardrobes passed down through generations or purchased without discernment often carry histories. You may see wood and polish, but spirits see thrones and altars. If that item once stood in a house of witchcraft or idolatry, it still carries the residue of those practices. Witches gravitate towards such furniture because it retains authority in the unseen world. Even pictures and posters of celebrities, idols, or figures celebrated for rebellion against God can shift the atmosphere of a house. When you exalt them on your wall, you are testifying agreement. Witches recognize the honor you give to such images and are drawn because honor is spiritual. It draws what is honored into your atmosphere. And I must speak about masks of animals and mythical creatures used as decoration. Dragons, serpents, gargoyles, beasts carved into statues. These are not harmless. They are representations of spirits and were used historically to invite protection from demons, not from God. When they sit in your home, you are hosting what they symbolize. Witches find them irresistible because they are familiar symbols of their craft. Another subtle door is fabrics and cloths covered with strange writings. Some may carry foreign languages or unknown symbols that you do not even understand, but spirits understand every script and witches can read them clearly. What you thought was design could be a declaration. Those cloths become scrolls testifying silently in your home. And even coins, charms, and keychains sold in markets as good luck tokens are anything but innocent. Horseshoes, four-leaf clovers, zodiac pendants, all belong to systems outside of God's covering. When they are in your home, they signal alignment with powers not of His Spirit. Witches are drawn because such symbols act as open invitations. And consider musical boxes, statues that play tunes, or wind chimes that sing in the breeze. Sounds are spiritual codes, and many of these items were not created for beauty alone, but for invocation. A melody can open a door, a sound can shift an atmosphere. Some of these chimes are crafted with symbols that act like tuning forks in the spirit, drawing witches to a home because they recognize the frequency being released. And then there are masks of comedy or tragedy, faces of gods and goddesses, replicas of mythical beings that people hang as decoration. They are not simply art, they are icons of worship. Wherever they hang, they alter the spiritual climate. Witches are attracted because those faces do not just look back at you. They look back into the unseen and declare ownership. Even glass bottles, jars, and containers filled with sand, seashells, or oils taken from sacred places can be dangerous. Many people collect them for aesthetics, but the truth is that elements carry memory. Sand taken from a graveyard, shells pulled from a ritual shore, oils infused with chants, all these carry the residue of their origin. Witches are attracted to them because those items vibrate with the covenant they were pulled from. Do not overlook simple decorative items like dream jars, crystal pyramids, or figurines of animals revered in occult practice. The world calls them lucky charms, but in reality, they are carriers of altars. When placed in your home, they are more than ornaments. They are legal claims in the spiritual court. Witches are drawn because they see their emblems displayed openly, like banners that mark territory. And I must point out the use of books of spells disguised as folklore, children's stories, or fantasy novels. You may keep them for entertainment or collection, but words create worlds. When those words were birthed from dark inspiration, they release seeds in the atmosphere of your home. Witches are attracted to those words like bees to nectar, because language carries power whether you believe it or not. Another overlooked magnet is fire itself when used incorrectly. Bonfires, candles, or incense burned with no prayer of consecration become strange fire. And strange fire has always been forbidden because it attracts strange spirits. Witches are drawn to any place where fire is kindled without the covering of God, because fire is covenant, fire is invitation, fire is sacrifice. And then there are containers of ashes, urns holding remains of the dead kept as keepsakes. Many keep them for remembrance, but spiritually they anchor a home to the realm of death. Witches find such homes welcoming because death is the currency they trade in. The ashes declare an open covenant between the living and the departed, and witches exploit that bridge. Even patterns carved into furniture, carpets, or ceilings may carry hidden symbols. You think it is just design, but some were crafted to replicate ancient seals. Those seals call on spirits, and witches are drawn to them as soldiers are drawn to the banner of their kingdom. Your home unknowingly becomes a temple marked with inscriptions you do not even understand. And think also about charms, bracelets, or anklets that carry the image of the moon, the sun, or the stars. These symbols are not just fashion statements. They are spiritual declarations. Long before they became jewelry, they were used in rituals to channel celestial powers. When they rest in your home, they testify that your household agrees with the forces they represent. Witches are drawn because those objects speak their language and announce common ground. There are also statues of angels and winged beings crafted not in reverence to God, but in imitation of his messengers. Many of these figures are distorted, carrying expressions of sorrow, pride, or rebellion. They are not harmless, they are counterfeits. And wherever the counterfeit is honored, the true presence withdraws. Witches are drawn because these figures align with fallen angels, not with the holy ones of heaven. Even simple bowls of fruit or offerings set aside for tradition can become open gates. Some cultures still practice the placing of food on shelves or corners of the house as a sign of remembrance. But in the spirit realm, those offerings are sacrifices. They invite visitation, they summon observation. Witches are drawn because those acts mimic the rituals they themselves perform. And do not forget fabrics and scarves with serpents, dragons, or beasts woven into their patterns. A snake printed on a cloth is not just design, it is identity. When you wear it, when you drape it over furniture, you are placing a serpent's emblem in your home. Witches recognize such symbols instantly, for they were birthed in their kingdoms. Even bottles of liquor and strong drink can shift an atmosphere. Not because the bottle itself is alive, but because alcohol has long been tied to rituals, sacrifices, and gateways of addiction. When stored and exalted in the home, it becomes more than drink, it becomes an altar. Witches are attracted because drunkenness is a doorway that lowers the guard of the spirit. And I must mention dolls, especially those with exaggerated features or created as replicas of humans. In many cultures, dolls were never meant for play. They were vessels for spirits. When such dolls are kept in a house, they provide form for influence. Witches are drawn because these objects can host their assignments quietly, undetected, while children treat them as companions. Another subtle entry point is the keeping of feathers, bones, or animal remains as decoration. Feathers hung in circles, bones carved into jewelry, animal skins draped across furniture. These things may appear natural, but many were used historically as spiritual anchors. Witches are drawn because those remnants connect to sacrifices where blood and life were exchanged. And even digital files, images, videos, and recordings stored on devices can be spiritual items in your house. When you allow pornography, violent imagery, or occult content to sit in your phone, computer, or TV, your home becomes an archive of darkness. Witches are drawn because your devices themselves release the frequency of what is stored within them, and you must pay attention to rings and necklaces engraved with initials you don't understand. Some contain geometric shapes, pentagrams, or spirals that are not just design but spiritual codes. Those engravings are seals, contracts in the unseen realm. When you carry them into your home, they cry out to powers that recognize their language. Witches are drawn because such items are already claimed, and your house becomes the ground where they exercise that claim. There are also paintings of mythical creatures, unicorns, fairies, mermaids, that many display in children's rooms. These are not simply fantasy, they originate from spirits that masquerade as light but belong to deception. Mermaids especially represent marine spirits, and when their image is exalted, it invites their atmosphere. Witches are drawn because those images act as spiritual advertisements. Even carpets, mats, or curtains designed with circular emblems can act as portals. Circles, triangles, and grids often hold meanings from ancient ritual patterns. While you only see design, spirits see a doorway. Witches are attracted to such patterns because they can operate in spaces marked by their ancient symbols without resistance. Do not overlook glass or crystal figurines. Many of them are shaped into animals, gods, or abstract patterns. They glimmer in the light, but in the realm of the spirit, they channel frequencies. Some are manufactured intentionally for New Age practices, sold as beauty, but created as conduits. Witches are drawn to such homes because those figurines resonate with their vibration. Even secondhand books, journals, and diaries can carry residue. Words are not just words, they are containers of the spirit of the writer. If those writings were filled with curses, bitterness, or invocations, the book becomes an altar of its own. Bringing it into your home without discernment is like signing your name under what was written. Witches are attracted because they hear the echo of those words still speaking. And then there are chains, locks, and keys used in rituals, but sold as jewelry or antiques. Keys represent authority, chains represent bondage, and locks represent gates. When these are carried into your home, especially those once part of rituals, they shift authority. Witches are drawn because those objects mark a place where control can be exercised. Even certain stones, obsidian, amethyst, onyx, marketed as healing crystals, are dangerous. The world tells you they balance energy, but in truth they were dedicated as conduits for spirits. When you place them on shelves, windowsills, or altars, you have just planted antennas in your home. Witches are drawn because those stones emit signals into the unseen realm. And beware of letters or charms tied with red strings, often given for protection. Strings and knots are ancient tools of witchcraft, binding destinies and tying lives into covenant. When such strings enter your home, they are not protection, they are cages. Witches are drawn because those knots testify that bondage already exists inside your household. So hear me well. Your home is not just a building of bricks and wood, it is an altar. It is the place where destinies are shaped, where children are molded, where marriages are preserved, where your covenant with God is lived out daily. If your home is filled with objects that give witches legal access, you are weakening your own covering. You cannot pray for peace and at the same time host what invites torment. You cannot ask for divine protection while decorating your walls with idols of darkness. It is time to walk through your home with discernment. Look at every picture, every gift, every symbol, every piece of clothing, every book, every item, and ask, does this glorify God or does this glorify another spirit? If it does not belong to the kingdom of light, it has no right to be in your house. Remove it, burn it, break it, dispose of it, purge your atmosphere. Because what you tolerate will dominate, and what you allow will eventually own you. You are the gatekeeper of your household. God gave you authority not only to protect your soul, but to guard your dwelling. Do not surrender your authority by ignorance. Do not allow witches to find a resting place where your children should be safe, where your prayers should ascend unhindered, where your destiny should flourish. Cleanse your home, sanctify your atmosphere, and declare boldly, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. When your home becomes an altar of light, no witch, no curse, no spell, no darkness can withstand it. For the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it.